Hey folks, welcome back to the garage. You know I love my muscle cars, and when it comes to American muscle, you can't go wrong with a Ford. We all know the Mustang, the iconic pony car that's been tearing up asphalt for decades. But what about Ford's other muscle machines, the ones that flew under the radar? In this video, we're diving deep into the world of 10 unloved Ford muscle cars, hidden gems that deserve a second look. So buckle up, grab a wrench, and get ready to explore some forgotten Ford powerhouses. Our first contender is the Ford Torino GT, a car that debuted in the late 60s with some serious style. Under the hood, you could get some potent V8 options, including the legendary 428 Cobra jet. Ford pushed the Mustang hard, and the Torino, despite its performance chops, kinda got lost in the shuffle. Plus, the Torino nameplate was used for a variety of models, from sedans to wagons, which might have diluted its muscle car image. But for those in the know, the Torino GT is a true sleeper. It's got the looks, it's got the power, and it's often overlooked, which means you can probably snag one for a decent price. If you're looking for a project car with a ton of potential, this might be it. Now, we're talking about a car that was built for one thing, going fast in a straight line. The Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt was a purpose-built drag racer disguised as a mid-size family car. Ford took their lightweight Fairlane, stuffed a 427 cubic inch V8 under the hood, and let it loose on the drag strips of America. This thing was a monster, capable of running the quarter mile in the low 11s, which was mind-blowing back in the early 60s. But here's the thing. Only about 100 Thunderbolt Fairlanes were ever built, making them incredibly rare and collectible today. Let's talk about presence for a second. The Ford Galaxie 500 XL had it in spades. This was a big, beautiful car, the kind that dominated American roads in the late 60s. And don't let the luxurious image fool you, the Galaxie 500 XL could pack some serious heat under the hood. We're talking about big block V8s, like the 428 Cobra jet and even the legendary 427. It could eat up asphalt with the best of them, all while carrying your entire family in comfort and style. Most people remember the Gran Torino from the TV show Starsky and Hutch, where it tore through the streets of Bay City. And while that bright red and white Gran Torino was a sight to behold, there was another version, the Gran Torino Sport, that offered a bit more under the hood. The Gran Torino Sport came with a range of V8 options, including a 400 cubic inch engine that packed a decent punch. Unfortunately, the Gran Torino Sport got lost in the shuffle of the early 70s. The oil crisis was in full swing, and fuel-efficient cars were in high demand. Before the Mustang took the world by storm, there was the Falcon. And while the base Falcon was a compact economy car, Ford had something special up their sleeve: the Falcon Sprint. This little car was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Under the hood, you could get a 260 cubic inch V8, and later, a 289. The Falcon Sprint was quick off the line, and it handled surprisingly well thanks to its lightweight design. When the Mustang debuted in 1964, it took the world by storm. The Falcon Sprint, despite its performance chops, just couldn't compete with its younger, sexier sibling. The Ford Maverick Grabber was a classic case of style over substance. This car looked the part of a muscle car, with its aggressive styling, racing stripes, and hood scoop. But under the hood, it was a bit of a letdown. The most powerful engine you could get in a Maverick Grabber was a 302 cubic inch V8. And the Maverick's suspension wasn't really up to the task of handling all that power, which made for a somewhat underwhelming driving experience. The Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe was an interesting experiment that didn't quite pan out. Ford wanted to create a luxury car that could also hold its own on the open road. It had a supercharged V6 engine that produced a respectable amount of power. It had a sport-tuned suspension, upgraded brakes, and all the luxury features you could ask for. But there was just one problem. It wasn't really a muscle car. It was more of a grand tourer than a tire-shredding monster. The Ford Crown Victoria LX Sport was a bit of an anomaly. It was a full-size sedan that was marketed as a sporty alternative to the more pedestrian Crown Victoria models. Under the hood was a 4.6-liter V8 engine that produced a decent amount of power. And while it wasn't going to win any drag races, it could get the big sedan moving at a surprisingly brisk pace. Plus, it had a sport-tuned suspension and upgraded brakes, which made it surprisingly fun to drive on a twisty road. But the Crown Victoria LX Sport was fighting an uphill battle. Even an icon like the Mustang has had its ups and downs. And for many enthusiasts, the Mustang Mach 1 from 1971 to 1973 represents a low point in the car's illustrious history. The early 70s were a tough time for muscle cars. The oil crisis, increasing emissions regulations, and rising insurance costs all conspired to take the wind out of the muscle car's sails. In the mid-1980s, Ford decided to try something a little different with the Mustang. Instead of relying on a big, thirsty V8, they created the Mustang SVO, a turbocharged four-cylinder powerhouse. The SVO was designed to be a more sophisticated kind of muscle car, one that emphasized handling and high-revving performance over brute force. The SVO's turbocharged four-cylinder engine produced a respectable amount of power, and its lightweight design made it a blast to drive on a twisty road. But the Mustang SVO was a bit too ahead of its time. Many muscle car enthusiasts couldn't wrap their heads around the idea of a four-cylinder Mustang, turbocharged or not. So there you have it, folks. 10 unloved Ford muscle cars that deserve a second look. Some were victims of bad timing, others were overshadowed by their siblings, and a few just marched to the beat of their own drum. But one thing's for sure, these cars all have something to offer. What do you think of these unloved Fords? Let me know in the comments below.